I can't always say hello to guests when they're here, but every now and then a couple of guests show up that are dear to my heart. And here in the front, we have Roger and Dawn Jacobs, who did not know I was going to embarrass them at all. You got to stand just for a second, or just up and down so people see you. Okay. Roger and Dawn are graduates of the school. We got out at about the same time. Came back. Roger worked maintenance, was our soccer coach, took us to the NCCAA finals. In there, Dawn has worked in a variety of places around here, development and communications. And they are one of these people that if you were to say, I need a quart of blood right now, and they gave it to you, it would come out blue and white. I love you guys. I'm so thankful for all you've given to this school, and I'm thankful you could be here today. Our speaker this morning is Lieutenant Colonel Tom Dull. Lieutenant Colonel Dull is the executive officer of listen to this, of the Character Integration Advisory Group of the United States Army. He's a 1998 graduate of BBC, as was his wife. And are you going to talk at all about this in the process, or I can talk about it now if you're not? I just want to know a little bit of who you are and what you're doing.
Give a little update on that.
Okay, yeah. Let's go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Lieutenant Colonel Dull serves at West Point. You know, we've had our seminary graduates in here who are high-ranking like this, who are service chaplains. Okay, Lieutenant Colonel Dull is not a chaplain. Okay, he's a career infantry officer. He's been around the world, led groups of soldiers in a variety of places, and done some really cool things. So, would you please welcome Lieutenant Colonel Tom Dull to our chapel?
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thanks. All right, so I appreciate the introduction, Dr. Lytle. I am not a pastor, so in fact, I have never preached before, so this is kind of an interesting place to be, but glad to be here. It worked good. I think about in the Army, I am an infantry officer, but in the Army, we do a planning process, we do mission analysis. And one of the things when we look at mission analysis, part of it really when we're going up against an adversary or an opponent, is we consider the terrain. And we call it terrain analysis. And we go through obstacles and we go through conditions that we think may be advantageous to us, either in the offense or the defense, or may be advantageous to the opponent that we're facing. And one thing that often comes up, and if you are a student of military history, what often comes up is the idea of key terrain. And key terrain is that piece of ground on the battlefield where whoever owns it has the advantage. For me, Clark Summit University is key terrain. And it's not in the topography and the geographical presence, but in our time here at Clark Summit in the mid and late 90s, what we gained here was simply special. And I think about the long line of folks who have come through here, and now you're part of that. And you wonder, and it was interesting talking with my nephew Hudson earlier this morning and Maya earlier this morning, but you wonder, like, what am I going to do, class of 23, class of 24, class of 25, class of 26? And you may be anxious about that, and you may be concerned about that. But what you receive here, and I'm telling you, what you receive here is a godly perspective of that wherever you're at, you'll be okay. And a biblical perspective that when it comes time to make decisions, and in my own life, and some of the toughest environment that I think a person could be in, whether in close combat with an adversary, like a physical adversary, or maybe in Ranger School, and some of the toughest challenges I've ever had, I recalled back to my time here, and it's frankly special. And if you don't know that now, I think when you recall maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you'll be glad for your time, and I hope you are. I came here in the early mid-90s to be part of a team. And this team is special. This is the 1995 team. I was a sophomore at the time, number 10 in the middle there beside Russ Davis on the crutches. But I came here because I was compelled by a good man. And it's Coach Jacobs. I didn't realize Dr. Light was interested in too, but I had come a couple years prior, and what you saw in this team, or in the way Coach Jacobs coached, was that he established a culture that was meaningful. And yeah, we wanted to get some wins and we wanted to get some W's, but there was something different from the other colleges that I was looking at. There was something about the culture. And so as I visited the year before, I was able to meet folks like Mark Fitch and Jeff Stimson and Derek Mosier. And these folks came alongside, hey, you should consider this. And then you ran into guys like Brian Bideman and Russ Davis, who is another uncle of Hudson. You have like 6 uncles that came here, I think, and mothers and grandfathers. And you got to see that there was something different. They had a purpose. It was not about just winning games and winning titles. It was about service to God. And it was interesting that I think that was cultivated by Coach Jay. And I saw in him and the way he was detailed. And I use his details even today. Like his attention to detail, his attention on working hard is something that I have taken into military for the last 23 years. It's pretty unique. The special side of it is his wife, which I didn't even know her name was Dawn until this morning. I thought it was Mama J. We called her Mama J. And the way she always cared for us. Like I can remember her being here about 30 meters to the north here on the soccer field. I'm hearing, Tommy! Sitting out there and just kind of caring for us. When I was going into my sophomore year, this year, my tooth was sore, and it was preseason. And Coach said, Mama J, hey, maybe you should get Tommy to the dentist. And so I went to the dentist, had a root canal, tooth taken out. I don't even know, I didn't pay for it. I don't know if you paid for it. I don't know if, Coach, if you paid for it. And like I said this morning, I probably owe you some money. But I am missing a tooth. I'm no longer in pain. But it was just the care and the service along the way. I think what was unique is a couple weeks ago, I ran into one of the seniors on that team when I was a sophomore. His name is Jason Holdridge. A chance meeting while we were dropping off our daughters at college their freshman year. And I was walking out of their student center and saw him and his wife, Heidi, having some public display of affection. I'm like, hey, y'all need to calm down. It's a Christian institution. And it was great to connect, right? So quickly we kind of gave the bro hug, kind of worked that out. But what was interesting to me was immediately the quality of conversation. He's a pastor in Michigan. I'm an Army officer. And we quickly got to the point about the folks that we were able to minister to, the folks that we have mentored through the years, the folks we have come alongside of. And even though his was in a church and mine is in a field or mine is in the military, it was so unique to have that common ground. I kind of directly relate that back to Coach Jacobs. And Jason's like, hey, do you have Coach Jay's phone number? I'm like, yeah. He's like, can you take a picture and send it to him? I'm like, yeah, I'll send a picture to him. So that was the photo we took at that college campus, and it was just really kind of neat. It's just special ground. It's just special ground, y'all. And I hope you take that seriously while you're here. I know you're crushed with time. I know you're crushed with classes. I know you got to go to class to class to class. And for you soccer players, I know you got soccer study halls. I know you got morning practices. I know you got afternoon practices, but you're 2-0, so calm down. You know what I'm saying? Or you're 3-0, calm down. First time in a long time, so just get there. We're happy to have you with us, right? So do what the coach Tibbs is telling you to do. I think it makes sense, and kind of work on that. The other thing I thought along the way is it's still impressive to me, the staff and faculty here. They are invested in your lives. My short time in the last couple of months reconnecting with Paul Golden has been tremendous, and to see how he ministers and how he cares about this institution. My very short time linking in with Darlene Catlett, I have not met her, I don't even know if she's here, just to kind of organize us to get here was special. And her kindness and thoughtfulness along the way, it was just impressive. We need more of that in our society. We need more of that in our church, at least my perspective. And then you jump in here and you see guys like Dr. Paul McGinnis. Hey, listen, if you want stories on McGinnis, come see me afterwards, right? He's a year behind me, 2 years behind me, and many of his stories. I don't know, he probably wasn't as calm as he is now, but we were in the same dorm in Ridley at the time, and just tremendous. You could see early on, even a couple years behind me, how you cared about Christ, brother, and it's neat to see you back here investing in these folks' lives. So appreciate what you're doing, my friend. So really neat, really neat. So the relationship side of it, right? Building teammates. I just wanted to kind of show this too. So on the top right there are the relationships I kind of made here that I didn't know while I was here, but now have been some 25 years later, key relationships. So my roommate, Matt Zuber, on the left, on the laser pointer left here, top right, and our buddy Don Poirier, who's with us a lot. It's been interesting knowing now what we didn't know back in the 90s, but through miscarriages, through 7 years of deployments overseas, through movements, through their family going through some issues, the connectiveness that we had, it was established here on key terrain, right? And anytime, I've probably talked to Matt 6 times this week. I probably talked to him 20 times last week, texting and calling, right? It's building the relationship. And those relationships you're building now, they're going to push for the rest of your life. So make it count now, because it will matter. And then on the top left, that's my wife, Liz. We were engaged our senior year right there on the soccer field. And again, not knowing what you don't know now, or you didn't know then, it's been impressive to me, her love and care along the way. She did not know she was marrying a soldier, right? It was September 11th, 2001, which is, the 21st anniversary a couple days from now. We didn't know how that would impact our life. And the way that she has encouraged along the way, the way that she has served on her own as a neonatal nurse practitioner along the way is just impressive. And bringing in 3 great kids, right, who I think trust Christ and look at Christ. Bailey, our oldest, in the middle, Mackenzie, who's here with us beside Mama Jay, and then Stinkin' Lincoln, our youngest, who's 9. It's just good to have him there. So I guess all that to say, long story long, y'all, is like the relationships will matter. Your biblical perspective will matter. Be anxious right now. It's okay, right? It will work out. God is good. Be anxious for nothing. And so know that's coming. So the question, I think, what Dr. Lytle was asking is like, so how do you get from Clark Summit University to serving in the U.S. Army, right? And I was drawn to being with teams. When I came out of college, I was kind of like, well, what are you thinking about doing? I thought I was working in seminary to get to church, or to work in a church, but I missed it. I missed the camaraderie. I missed the camaraderie of being on our team. I missed the camaraderie of traveling 2 summers with great guys like Tim Holridge, Cliff Johnson, Chad Storr. I missed the camaraderie with guys that were in my dorm like Mark Stazauskas and Dwayne Moore, and these guys that just came alongside and they were willing to encourage you, right? And I missed it. I also wanted the challenge. I wanted to do something kind of hard and tough. I know that sounds like very bravado, but I just wanted to see what I was made of, right? And so you can imagine going to my wife, we're married for a year, and I'm like, hey, baby, I was thinking, you know what I'm saying? And, that's when the man says that to his wife, they're kind of like, not good, you know what I'm saying? But I was thinking about joining the Army, and she has no clue what the Army is, and nor do I, right? I'm like, I promise you this, I'll just get in the reserves, we'll do a couple years, and we'll get out. And that kind of was the plan. But when September 11th came along, for us, our generation, there was a huge impact, right? The attacks that took place in New York, in Washington, D.C., and in Western Pennsylvania kind of influenced our generation, right? And it's unique. If I were to show you the soccer photo over here, Coach Jay's team, there's about 5 or 6 of those gents that all joined the service too to kind of go serve their country. John Hicks, I think, has a mom or dad. They're still involved here. He was on there. Aaron Palczewski, a good friend of Paul McGinnis and I, he joined service. Brandon Baker, who was I went to high school with, but was on the team with us there, he joined the service. And so it was interesting to see these guys jump out to do something that was greater than themselves, all because I think they were taught that all along the way here at Clark Summit. So it was kind of unique. You jump into the military, right, and it's a different environment, y'all. It's a little bit different, right? Everybody's tough. Everybody's kind of like trying to figure some things out, and they're trying to see who's the fastest, who's the smartest, who can compete. But the skills that were offered here was the idea of building teams. A platoon leader bottom left in Iraq, a company commander up in the top in Afghanistan, an aide-de-camp in Afghanistan, a battalion XO on the top over there in Europe, in Poland, in Germany to meet Russian aggression and deter them, a brigade executive officer in the far right here, and trying to bring staffs together. So I quickly learned that, hey, this is not anything foreign to me because I had good teaching here at Clark Summit. Let's build a team. Let's build a team. And so what I want to look at today is from the book of Philippians chapter 2. Again, I'm not a pastor, so we'll see how this goes, so bear with me. But this is a team building model that I have used with my men, with my soldiers for the last 14 years. And I started as a company commander going to Afghanistan, and then I used it as a battalion executive officer, and then again as a brigade executive officer. And now as I look with Dr. Lyle said, working with this character integration team at West Point, I'm working with the civilians and the military folks that are under our charge there. So this is kind of the situation, right? This is the situation I think that you're seeing right now, and you, class of 23, 24, 25, and 26, are going to find yourself in. This is the American situation that has now found itself in our church. It's political polarization. Can you be a Democrat and be a Christian? Can you be a Republican and be a Christian? I don't know. I mean, it's interesting, right? Those are questions asked. It's about race, right? It's about gender. It's about the pandemic. It's about the vaccinations. Should we do it? Should we not do it? Should we wear masks? Should we not wear masks, right? It's about trust. It's about anger, right? You're seeing a lot of anger, not only in our environment here in our country, but also in our church. It's about not being kind. And this information, the speed of technology that you can push something out fast and you can say something about someone or you can provide an opinion very quick is either tearing us apart and not often building us up. There's a great book out there, and I think Paul saw one of your medias, but Andy Stanley's Not In It to Win It book is a great one if you want to take a look at kind of how he views how a Christian should then live here in this environment. But I'm going to tell you right now, I think your generation is who we need. We need you out there because I think your generation is a little bit different than my generation. Frankly, I think you're more forgiving than us. We're the ones that caused the divisiveness. We're the ones that caused all these issues with race and gender. I think you're more forgiving, and I think you're more kind. I think what you got to concern yourself with is that what will you tolerate coming into the church, right? And if it goes against sound doctrine, it goes against sound theology, then how do you live, right? So what I want to take a look at is how then should the Christian live? And so if you have your Bibles and you turn to the book of Philippians, right, I want to start off quickly with Philippians 1:27. You then live for the cause. Philippians 1:27 tells us this, right? And then later in the same verse it says, working side by side, y'all, teammates, working side by side for the faith of the gospel of Christ. And so up front, bottom line up front, is we have a common purpose. We are undivided because we work side by side for what Christ did for us. And as you jump into the second chapter of Philippians, and you'll see that later in verse 5, you'll see this incredible example of what Christ did for us. But then, along the way, how do we act as teammates? How do we ask for teammates as we go through it? So this is what I want to take a look at. Has anybody ever jumped out of an airplane? Anybody ever want to jump out of an airplane? That's what I'm talking about, man. I just want to know what we're working with, all right? I want to tell y'all, first of all, there's nothing better than jumping out at 10,000 feet, right? And you're jumping out, you're stacked, right? You're stacked with about 5 guys. You're jumping out, you can see curvature of the earth. You kind of dry heave for a quick second, and then you gird your loins, and you bring it back together and realize there's a purpose for this, right? But you jump out, middle of the night, you're falling, you jump out 10 grand, you pop parachute at about 8 grand, right? And then you're stacked like that. And you're looking beside you, and you're like, okay, man, that's Derek Garner over there. All right, man, that's Dan Young over there. Or that's Tom Dahl over there. You're kind of flying, and you're stacked in this kind of formation. And nothing cooler because it's quiet, right? And you jump out, you're under canopy for about 2 miles, trying to get to the drop zone, and then you take that landing, right? You get on the DZ, you kind of pull anything, you pop the canopy release system, parachute falls back, and next thing you know, you're in the middle of the night, pull down night vision goggles, looking around. I'm like, there's Gardner. There's McGinnis. What's he doing out here? You know what I'm saying? There's Young. And you know you're in the AO or the air operation with your teammates. And there's trust, and there's selflessness, and it's pretty special. So here's what I think. Taken from Philippians 2:3 and 2:4, and the model I've used with my teams is, 1, first of all, I don't think you should be selfish. So Philippians 2, verse 3 says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourself. So do nothing from selfish ambition, all right? I think selfishness is the root cause of what we're seeing in our culture and in our churches today. People simply can't get along because I think people take their own personal advantages. It's not good enough what you're doing. I have my own agenda, and I am not going to look out for others. In my military experience, when I bring in a subordinate leader, I ask that subordinate leader, hey, what are you here for? What are you looking at? And they'll probably give me a couple of good kind of reasons, like I want to come here because I want to lead soldiers. All right, that's great. I want to serve. That's great. But why are you really here? And what I try to draw them back to is their oath, right? All officers take an oath of office, right? And they take an oath to the Constitution of the United States. It's just the idea of America, right? It's the principles of America. I said, if you can take a look at that, everything along the way will set the conditions. And so for us, going back to 127, Philippians 127, we look at Christ, right? If Christ is the one that we consider, we have the opportunity to have our eyes focused on him, and we walk in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Colossians 3:18 talks about putting off some pretty nasty stuff. It says, but now you must put them all away: anger, wrath, malice, slander, obscure talk from your mouth. And I think one of the most damaging ways that we as teammates in the church and in society kind of break the team is that we slander. We simply can't say good things about someone else. In fact, we're so kind of like stuck on ourselves that we make them sound worse. Anybody ever see that in politics? Has anybody seen that in American politics recently? Like, they can't just say something good about their own self. They gotta tear someone down. And you see it. I fear that you see a little bit in the church, and I know you see it in our teams. And so I ask our officers, I'm like, hey man, I'm going to ask you one thing. Like, in your time here, if it's 18 months, if it's 24 months, don't slander. And like, what is slander? Because it's like a biblical word. I'm like, slander means that you say bad things about someone else in order to make yourself sound better. Does that make sense? Yes, sir, that makes sense. All right, don't slander anyone. Come alongside them. Don't be selfish. One of my favorite kind of heroes in military history is then General George Washington, right? He was the one that in 1775, a year before the founding of our country, was given the opportunity to lead the Continental Army. The Continental Army at the time, for all you history buffs, was not really an army, right? They were located in Boston, Massachusetts. They were a bunch of ragtag militia coming out of Concord, Lexington, Burlington, Reading, and they were trying to kick the British out of Boston, right? They didn't realize what they were going to do was going to start a war that was going to take place for the next 5 or 6 years, right? And George Washington did not want the job because he didn't think he was capable of doing the job. And it's probably exactly what we needed, right? And so his humility along the way. So as he's fighting and leading this Continental Army throughout the next 4 or 5 years of the war, he actually, in his own army, brings up and raises up generals to fight for him to the point that they start talking bad about him. There was a general named General Lee, not the one that fought in the Civil War, but General Lee that thought he was a better officer than Washington. And he went to the Continental Congress and said, George Washington isn't capable of winning this war for then the colonies, right? Because at that point in time, General Washington had been defeated 7 times, right? He had 1 win at Trenton, right? When they crossed over Christmas night, beat the Hessians. But the rest of the time, he was just getting kind of punched in the face, punch in the face, punch in the face, punch in the face. And so, I can do it better. George Washington is terrible. I can do it better. Washington, to his credit, never responded to General Lee. General Lee then goes to Washington's executive officers, 2IC, his second in command, and says, I need your help in this. Then Colonel Reed then takes it to the Continental Congress and says, yeah, Lee's right. Washington isn't good enough. Put somebody else in there. Well, long story long, Lee takes another battle. Lee loses the battle. Washington has never said a word, good or bad, about Lee. And the Continental Congress says, no, I think we'll stick with GW. You know what I'm saying? Let's stick with GW. He seems to know what he's doing. And it was kind of neat, right? The end is history. General Washington resigns his commission when we beat the British in Yorktown, and they resign. And so he comes back, and they're like, oh, we're going to start a country. We need to have someone that's going to be a president. We don't want a king, right? God bless the queen. We all know she just died yesterday. But we don't want a king. And they go to George Washington. George Washington, in his letter back to Continental Congress, says, I am not capable of doing this. I don't have the ability to do this. But if I do this, I do it only for the cause. I do it only for the idea of America. And I will prosecute that cause, and I will do it with all my integrity. And that is the example I think that we as Christians should have, right? You do it for the cause in order to walk in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. No selfishness, no slander of anyone else, but for the cause of Christ. And I think that's one of the most significant things that you can have as you look at it. The third point I tell my guys is like, hey, don't be conceited. And this is the idea that folks who just, they know, they're know-it-alls, right? They know how to do it. They know the answer and not willing to like listen to anyone else. One of the most humbling experiences I had was to attend the U.S. Army Ranger School back in 2005. It is hard. It is 61 days if you're lucky and not recycled into 120 days. It is 61 days of sleep deprivation, food deprivation. When I say sleep deprivation, 2 hours of sleep at night for 60 days with one meal ready to eat a day throughout that time. And you are practicing leading, and you're practicing leading small units. And you will see very quickly that there are those who come into the school and they think they understand it all and just listen to them. But the ones who survive Ranger School are usually the ones who are not conceited, and they actually are the ones who are good peers. They are good friends, and they come alongside of one another. Galatians 6:3, which I think was a great passage for this, talks about this. For if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. And so this idea like, hey, you're in it for the team. You're in it for the cause, for the gospel of Christ. And it's unique and it's special. I'd advise y'all, listen and learn. Listen and learn and simply be a good teammate. The third one, anybody know the picture up here? I'll come to that here in a second, Josh. Josh, I know you, man, and I know you're sitting right there, and you have no idea who I am. So I am an infantry officer. I have targeted for the last 6 months who you are. I've trolled you. You got commentary? Go ahead. Just stay seated for a second. We'll bring you up when appropriate. All right. So the next thing is pursue humility. Right. I think this is the strength virtue of any team, in the church and in the team you're going to lead when you get out into your careers. If you can find humility, and you have no agenda other than for the cause of Christ, I think your team will come together. It was interesting, as I was targeting Josh, and I was looking at some social media, and Paul Golden gave me permission to use anything on social media from Clark Summit University. This was interesting to me, Josh, and I hope this is true. So Josh, please stand. Please rise. Josh Fowler said this: my goal can be summed up into one word: trust. I want to be able to trust my team. I want my team to trust me to get a job done. I want for us to trust each other enough to give each other our burdens. I want for my school to continue trusting in God as we move forward with this next school year. You believe it? Y'all believe it? Trust. Mutual trust. Go ahead, bro. Josh, sorry to target you, man. Mutual trust, we would call that in the Army up and down the chain of command. If he says that, then hopefully he's earned that. And those are strong words, my friend. They're great words. All too often, though, because we can't attain humility, the strength virtue, we find ourselves not being kind to one another, and we're not even grateful for our teammates. I think back to Matthew 6, and it's the idea of Matthew 6, 16 and 18. And when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces, that their fasting may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your feet, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees you will receive you. There's something special about that. Can you live life for the cause so that you don't bring any glory or ambition on yourself? Can you pursue humility for the cause, for your teammate? Imagine a church that looks to be humble. Imagine a church who pursues humility. Imagine a team, as you get into your careers, that has a leader that is trying to build forth a humble team. You'll do so much good, y'all. You'll do so much good for the cause and for the organization you're with. The fourth principle that came from Philippians chapter 2 is consider your teammate more important than yourself. It was pretty neat to watch the women's basketball team last semester and last year, was it not? No one? Y'all big fans of the Lady Defenders basketball team? I think, watching it, and I was in and out of work last year, but watching them do some things, it was really neat to see. Kind of want to come around and see them whoop up on Keystone, you know what I'm saying, in the conference final, and give them a little something, and then get yourself into the national tournament. That's a big deal. I mean, good job, y'all, and way to represent Clark Summit University. My guess, and I don't know anyone on the ladies' team, but my guess is that there's probably more than just like the technical side. And I was down here watching the boys work out this morning a little bit, showing up some student from seeing the 1 and the 3 out there, and they wouldn't let me take any shots. Neither would Mike Shao. But My guess that those ladies, there's probably something a little bit more than the technique and the tactics that you work on, but there's probably something to be said about the chemistry on that team. My guess is that team probably considered their teammates more important than themselves. One thing I always thought was unique when we played for Coach Jay, and in that year, my sophomore year, and that we won a national championship that year, he would say this, he's like, we weren't the greatest of skilled teams that he had in his time. He had some better teams, but he said the chemistry, you could feel it. You'd cut it with a knife. You could feel it on the team. There was something special, right? Because those seniors, those juniors looked out for us sophomores and freshmen. It was thick. It was intangible, but you knew it was there. And even though Dan Dundor couldn't juggle more than 10 times the ball, right, he led that team as playing the holding midfielder, the outside back, and he was able to get out there and work with his work ethic. But he led well. And there was such chemistry because of that leadership on that team, because they looked out for all of us, right? They were making sure that there were sophomores and freshmen when we had overnight staying in the hotel room with seniors and juniors, right? They were making sure that we were getting to the bus on time. We were making sure that, hey, it's Coach Jay. Like, you make sure, like, when you put your laundry back into the laundry place, you don't cut the strings on the shorts, you don't do anything, you lay it out flat. They were teaching us, right? They were looking out for our best interests because it was more important to them. I think it's unique. I love 2 Samuel 23. Has anybody ever looked at 2 Samuel 23 and David's mighty men? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, they are warriors to the heartbeat. My first time hearing a message from 2 Samuel 23 was in chapel in that that fall of 95 by Ken Rudolph. I had never even heard about it. Yeah, Ken Rudolph, you guys know him? And he starts talking about these guys. They were just doing great things. And I think they're doing great things, because they're just like bravado men. But no, they were doing it for a cause. They were doing it because they wanted to support David, and David was fighting for Yahweh, and they wanted to support the cause of God. And so they had these 3 mighty men. David says, man, I'm thirsty, right? He's been out there fighting. He's like, man, what I want to do for some water down in Bethlehem. You know what I'm saying? And these 3 mighty men, Bethlehem then is surrounded by Philistines. These 3 mighty men, they conduct a military raid for a glass of water. Nothing but love, you know what I'm saying? And so they insert, I don't even know how this, I would love to have watched this, you know what I'm saying, from like maybe some ISR from a drone above. But they insert through the Philistine stronghold. I guess they get to the well. All I imagine is like a little well like this. But they grab the water back, bring it back to David, and I'm like, here you go, brother. Here you go, king. Drink this water because we need you to be strong, because we need you to lead us, right? And he's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And he dumps it on the ground, right? He pours out a sacrifice. I love the fact that those 3 men decided to put their lives on the line for a cup of water so that their leader, who was fighting for Yahweh, for the cause, would be strengthened. That's cool. That's cool, right? And so, like, I tried to name Lincoln Benaiah, and Shammah, but my wife wouldn't have nothing to do with it. I wanted to have, like, the mighty men, Uriah, all those guys listed out, but my wife wouldn't have anything to do with it. But I think it was kind of cool. That's the idea. The last thing I'll get to here is the final point I tell my guys when you look at Philippians chapter 2:4 is look out for the interests of your teammates. And it's the idea of what you see in verses 1 and verse 2 of Philippians actually is coming alongside. It's parakletos, it's encouragement, right? And it's being aware of your teammate's situation. Does anybody know who that is in the top middle corner, that picture there? That is, That's baby Ella Hayworth. All right, so that is baby Ella Hayworth. Like no change, right? Like no change. Ella, no change, right? Here's what. She is near and dear to our family. And if you know Ella, right, she's had some physical ailments along the way, and she's had some tough times along the way. But I think the one thing, Ella, that has impressed me is how you care for our daughters. 7 years of deployments where they have been without their dad, and you always check in on them. You give them a little love. Hey, what's up? You know what I'm saying? And your joy and perseverance. She looks out for her teammate. That's cool. Like, can you look out for someone else's interests? Be aware of their situation. Romans 15:1 talks about, find my notes here. Romans 15:1 says, we who are strong have an obligation to bear with the failing and not to please ourselves. Let us, each of us, please his neighbor for the good to build him up. That's a good teammate, y'all. That's Ella Hayworth in my mind. Maybe you have a different opinion of her, but that's how I've seen her and the way she's treated my daughters along the way, and I think that's really cool. We're coming to close here. Anybody know who these guys are? What is it? Yeah, the All Blacks, that's right. They are probably the greatest rugby team of all time, right? And they're just unique, right? And they look tough. Right? I wish I looked like the captain in the middle there. But what they're doing right now is the haka, right? They're on the field and they're doing this kind of ancient kind of like, people think it's to intimidate, but they're literally telling the other team, we are honored to have you on the field of battle today. Let this be a good match. But if you ever had the chance to look at the book called Legacy by James Kerr, where he talks about the All Blacks, there's something unique about this culture. They are 100% teammates. After a match, you will see in the locker room, past the post-game press conferences and past everything else, they got to clean up the locker room. And typically, on most teams, who cleans up the locker room, right? It's the rookies, it's the young guys, right? They're the ones cleaning up the locker room. Not for the All Blacks. It's the captains. It's the captains. They come alongside, they take care of their rookies' laundry, they sweep up the floor, and they call it sweep the sheds because they continue to steward. They steward what it means to be a teammate and what it is to be in a culture and what it is to be a part of something that is greater than themselves. So this is the model that I use when I talk to my guys. In the Army, I tell them your cause is for the idea of America. Just the idea, not perfect. America is not perfect. It never has been, never will be. But it's for the principles that we find in the Constitution. For the believer, it is Philippians 1:27. It is for the gospel and the faith, the gospel of Christ that we have been provided to us in our salvation. Can you walk in a worthy manner? Can you not be selfish? Can you not be conceited? Can you practice humility? Can you work side by side? Can you consider teammates more important than yourself? And can you look out for the best interests of your teammates? That's the challenge. That's what I think it means to be a good teammate in your career and in the church. If we get there, y'all, class of 23, 24, 25, 26, no better team. No better team than the Church of Christ. We're glad to have you. We're glad to have you on this long line of Clark Summit, soon-to-be alumni. And we're grateful to have you out here, I would say in the force using the Army, but out in the environment to do good on behalf of the cause, Jesus Christ. Make sense? All right. Thank you very much.